Macmillan Audio presents The Redemption of Time, a three-body problem novel by Baoshu, translated by Cixin Liu, narrated for you by P.J. Ochlan. This book is dedicated to Mr. Liu Cixin. Preface to the English edition. Writing The Redemption of Time is one of the most remarkable events of my life. Like many others, I became a loyal fan of Liu Cixin at the beginning of the 21st century, when Liu was just starting to make his mark as a science fiction author. We called ourselves Zitie, meaning magnets, which is a pun for the Chinese abbreviation of die-hard fans of Liu Cixin, and passionately discussed his stories on internet forums. As each of his stories was published, the news spread among us like wildfire, and we rushed out to buy the magazine issue. In 2006, when Science Fiction World serialized The Three-Body Problem, the first book in his magnificent Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy, also known as the Three-Body Trilogy, I devoured each installment and hungered for the next, utterly entranced. The standalone edition of The Three-Body Problem was published at the beginning of 2008, and the first sequel, The Dark Forest, came out about 6 months later. Although the books hadn't yet penetrated mainstream literary conversation, science fiction fans enjoyed the rich imaginative feast presented by these two books. However, after those first two books, I and the other Zitie had to resign ourselves to a long wait for the next installment. 2.5 years later, in November of 2010, the last volume of the trilogy, Death's End, finally went on sale in China. At the time, I was in graduate school in Belgium and could not get my hands on the book. I seriously considered flying back to China just to buy it. In the end, my friend Gao Xiang helped me out by photographing every page of the book and emailing the pictures to me. I was deeply touched by my friend's gesture, but it wasn't until much later that I understood the full significance of the publication of this novel for me. After I finished Death's End, along with fans in China who had bought the book as soon as it came out, we debated and explored every detail in the book over the internet. But no matter how many posts we wrote, the magnificent grand arc of the trilogy was at an end, and we felt ourselves drifting away from the story day by day. The melancholy that seized us made me decide to write separate stories for a few of the characters in the trilogy and extend the epic tale a little longer. 2 days later, I wrote down a dialogue between Tianming and IAA on Planet Blue and posted it on the web under the title Three-Body X. X didn't mean 10. Rather, it stood for uncertain. This wasn't the first time I wrote Liu Cixin fan fiction, and I certainly wasn't the first to do so. But before my tale, most such efforts were written by fans for a small group of other hardcore fans. I had no idea that the context for Three-Body X was entirely different. What I wrote was exactly what tens of thousands of readers needed at that moment. More stories from the Three-Body universe. Its timely appearance, barely a week after the publication of Death's End, allowed it to receive far more attention than could be justified by its inherent quality, and the praise encouraged me to continue writing, developing, and growing the storyline I had in mind, until it gradually took on a shape of its own. 3 weeks later, before Christmas 2010, I completed my novel. By then, Three-Body X had spread to every corner of the Chinese web, and received almost as much discussion and attention as Death's End itself. Mr. Yao Haijun, Liu Cixin's good friend, who is nicknamed the Chinese Campbell for his role in developing new writers as the executive editor of Science Fiction World, contacted me to ask if he could publish it as a standalone book. A few months later, as Three-Body fever continued to sweep Chinese SF fandom, more fan fiction appeared. But the brief window of opportunity was gone, and these new works did not receive nearly as much attention as mine. I knew that I was lucky. When I first posted my story online, I wasn't thinking much about copyright. Of course, once a
Sample complete. Ready to continue?